Ladies and gentlemen, the esports World Chess Cup has ended. And today we are going to discuss a couple of games from Magnus Carlsen and Firouzja Alireza in the finals. If you didn't know, the esports World Cup is the first time including chess this year. So this is a very nice history for overall chess and thing, and maybe next year it will be a bigger event. So finals are already done a couple of minutes ago. Let's do a recap and let's start. So they've been playing 8 games, and Magnus Carlsen started with the white pieces. He started with d4 in the first game, knight f6, e4, e6, and okay, we have here the Catalan, one of the most favorite openings from the Magnus Carlsen. Bishop d6, something really untypical. Usually we are seeing here bishop e7 being played all the time, but bishop d6 contains its own idea of playing later for the break of e5. Of course, Magnus bishop g2, castle, castle, everything started. Now this untypical move, knight c6. So Alireza is trying to build up for the central break. Knight c3 takes, and this is the whole point. Since black cannot rely all the time on e5, he needs to do some complications also on the queen side. So this usually comes that white is sacrificing the opponent c4 and trying to seek for the compensation, while black is trying to fight and actually keep this pawn advantage for the rest of the game. But of course, this pawn is always very hard to protect by black. That's why Alireza is searching for immediate break here with e5. d5, I think this is all very well known theory. Knight e5, so we've seen some trades here, and everything pretty much ends in a equal endgame here. As you see, there is no imbalances, there is no tactical moments, even though queen trade could happen very soon. As you see here, more trades, and finally very symmetrical pawn structure. Ending in this position is dream against Magnus Carlsen, of course, especially with black pieces, because what can white do? I think even black can do more, because look at this, could be scary, like if queen is on h3, like this could be checkmate in 2 moves, right? But at this point, after knight e5, Alireza collect the pawn on c3, and after knight takes c6, such a natural position. There is absolutely no threats here. But there is one actually. And knight b8. So this is just impossible, right? Like whole game perfect and suddenly blunder. But look at this blunder. Like the only move that wins the game, because it traps the rooks in the corner. So after takes, he's simply down material, and he cannot retake back with this rook, because then after this will happen, as you see. So that's a little problem, and that's why Alireza has to take on a2. He brings the queen back, but now it's completely different, because he's just simply exchanged down, and Magnus managed to win this quite easily without any problems. White just has to be careful to not receive some fork, but as you see, knight is not flexible as the rook here, and game ended up in a win for Magnus Carlsen in this game. Quite easy, right? So in another game, Alireza was taking white pieces. They're playing the Italian game, and now Alireza opted for fried liver, which is one of the most popular opening on the level around 1500, because it's we know the trap, like behind d5, like if knight takes now, then knight f7 is coming, but of course they know the theory. Knight f5 here, and now bishop d7 is a second optional line for black. We all know that c6 is the main move here, and the best move according to engines. Bishop d7 is another option, where white has to know the move queen e2. Otherwise, if he takes on d7, then queen will just retake back, and black will have perfect position after alongside castles. And also queen is protecting f7 after that. So that's why queen e2, threatening the pawn on e5, protecting the bishop here. Bishop d6, knight c3, developing the pieces, and now this move is apparently not one of the moves that is inside the first main lines in this theoretical variation. So knight c3 is not the best move, but this is some home prep from Alireza. The whole point is to provoke c6 happening, because knight c3 is also protecting the d5, and it's also planning to jump in the middle and support some tension on the king side. So that's why c6 has to be done here, and now Alireza is playing for the tricks. After few trades, obviously bishop is hanging, so pawn cannot take, like it will be collapsing for black in that case, since king will remain in the center. Bishop e7 takes with the knight, and now Alireza opts to give up the bishop pair, but to keep this pawn. And of course Magnus is having compensation for that pawn, but it's not very easy to prove this compensation, that actually black is the one that's doing better with his bishop pair. You know, it's always hard to winning position. Of course, this is not winning, but it's much better position for black in the practical point of view, because these bishops can be really dangerous if the things get wide open in the center. So after a lot of moves are regrouping, then we can see here finally, according to Evil Bar, that Alireza managed to stabilize the center with this break. Why? Because he's about to trade some piece. If Magnus decides to take, he will take, then this bishop take, then queen takes, and suddenly white is totally fine, because bishop on c6 is hitting the wall. So that's why Magnus has to break it through with e4, trying to again make imbalances and put some questions on white's king side, because this king is not so much safe here on h1, to be honest. e4, bishop d7, bishop d4, takes, and now already again imbalances, but suddenly here white is not having problems too much. King is safe, but Magnus start playing really fast while Alireza start thinking. And if you did watch this moment during the live show, you would see that Alireza was not sure in his calculation and he was not relying on his intuition. And you can see the clock. He burned 2 minutes for the move 94. Look at this, 2 minutes, which is not so much good when you don't have increment in chess. And of course Magnus replied with 2 seconds move, like bishop f5. He brings the rook back. He again burned 40 seconds. Look at this, 40 seconds for this. Again Magnus replies within 1 second with this move. Look at this, how fast he's and confident in his intuition. Rook g1, and now bam, another brilliant move. Apparently the only move for Magnus, because if he moves for example, the queen on f7, then I think the 96 is coming, and then Alireza is going to be better. And also g7 is open, so that's why rook takes e4. Takes, and now we are ending in this rook endgame where the chances are equal, of course. After rook b6, only white can do something here. Magnus didn't want to defend with rook d7, but look at the clock time. So is Magnus going to complicate with rook endgame, or he's going to trade the rooks like he did? I don't know, is this decision good? Maybe rook d7 was interesting move here, or just going and collect this pawn on c2 to provide and save the rooks on the board. That could actually complicate more stuff here. But I know that Magnus Carlsen is a fair player. He's not looking for flagging. And here it's a very interesting moment that even Magnus Carlsen didn't understand what's happening here in this pawn endgame. Why king g2, such a natural move, bringing king to our center, mistake. Actually b4 is very amazing move. The point is just to not make more time, like in endgame, it's all about timing. You know, if you spend pawn moves, then you're not gonna have for yourself later, like Alireza already did later, to bring the pawns to the third rank, having even more moves later. But b4 is squeezing the space for the pawns, and that's why this move is also very amazing. Because at some point he will put the white in zugzwang, and then he needs to make moves with some of these pawns, which actually makes weaknesses immediately. Because after this, now there is a route for the king to enter in. On the other side we have 3 versus 2. We're gonna make decoy, and then we're gonna collect all these pawns. That's why b4 he rushed a little bit. I think he also saw during the game that he made mistake. And now Alireza made a wall, as you see, with these pawns here perfectly lined up, controlling everything. There is no entrance. On the other side, he can try to break through, but on the other side, how he's gonna, together with this pawn, go for the H-line promotion. And then they repeated. Magnus is of course gentleman. He didn't want to flag the Alireza, and this game ended up in a draw. The other game, Magnus Carlsen started with e4, he faced Caro-Kann, and now he played this really trendy line with d3, which invites black to take and trade the queens. This line is very trendy nowadays. I am really recommending you playing. It's very safe. You can also check a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about this Caro-Kann line. It's very nice. g6 instead for fight. Alireza does not want to go into this trading lines. Knight b2, and now Magnus is just building normal King's Indian attack system, where black is managing to get a center also for itself, but you know, it's a very classy opening, especially for the blitz rapid games, where you keep pieces and keep complications on the board. So we have standard development in this position, some traits in the middle, and sooner or later symmetrical structure appears. But the problem is a little bit these dark squares. If white managed to bring the bishop to f4, then queen is a little bit, and all these squares are, you know, weird, right? There's a weaknesses, and this knight is very nice here, so he just wants this square for the bishop, and that's it. That's why he takes. Even though this bishop is a very, very nice piece around the king, controlling these light squares, he realized that bishop on f4 is going to be immortal piece, like he did. And as you see in this moment, I don't know why he decided to go into this position now, where he is going to get a knight, like Reza taking here, he's taking here. But now if he managed b6, bishop b7, then this knight gun will be very interesting. You know, there's some idea that he could try. Of course, rook e8 is playing, queen f3, and now h5, and black is totally fine here. Maybe he could try something different. Instead of bishop d6, like knight d6 looked also interesting, but the problem is, you know, maybe he was thinking that what if he just jump on knight e4 here? And if he takes knight c8, he will take with rook or queen whatsoever. And now this knight is a little problem for him. He does not want to play f3. This makes the king more open, and this is something maybe what Magnus didn't like. He wanted to eliminate knight on c5, but then they end up in this position. And yeah, this game ended up in a draw, because this endgame is very, you know, you see, balanced. There is no problems for anyone here. We're just hanging around with the pieces. White tried to put a pressure on these pawns. So of course, there is light square bishop that controls these pawns, so there is no problem for the light square pawns. On the other side, there is no breaks for the king, and sooner or later, after some trades, the game ended up in a draw, because there is no any entrance. And also in this case, again, Alireza had a little bit long time, and they decided to repeat here and draw. So it's already, how much? 2 versus 1 for Magnus, right? So now Alireza needs to do something, because it's the end of the set. So here Alireza played Italian game, normal stuff, very standard stuff, a4, a5. I played this line myself. This is very nice, provocative line, where usually bishop can end up here, knight here, and then looking for the break of d4. Knight bd2, h3, all standard things. Theoretical, bringing the knight over. Also black, he wanna build c6 and d5, which is standard Italian idea. c6, d5. We're retreating back bishop just to avoid the problems. Take with the knight. Bishop d2, rook e8, queen c2. So now typically what is white trying here is to close up this bishop from a7, because this bishop is always annoying on this pawn here. And that's why also h3 to not allow knight g4 later. Queen f6 and getting in touch with this knight on g3 could be a problem, because this is always pinned. So if we take the knight on g3, black will win the material, of course. So bishop e6, rook d1, so both sides are consolidating, developing. As you see, queen c7, bringing the piece to the center, and Alireza goes for c4. So in this moment, after knight e4, Alireza was thinking during the game to push c5, and like he was about to play that. And the problem is then where this bishop goes. If he goes later on b8, then he's looking at his own pawn. And this is one of the moves that will give some edge to white. But then he decided to take this knight. So he was relying more on calculation than on initiative. And that's why Alireza now is having almost 3 minutes, while Magnus 8 minutes on the clock. So he was not relying on intuition, while Magnus is not calculating anything that much at all. And now, of course, black is super fine here. There is no problems with a black's position, even though he got the bishop pair. Instead, he decided now to do that. Firstly, to trade one of these knights, but there is no need. Knight on g6 is not coming into the game, so he does not need to get into this position without the bishop. And of course, since now there is no dark square bishop on the board, there is no control of these pawns, this d4 break is weird. Why? Because this one will fall down, and then the c5 pawn later will become a weakness, which actually Magnus showed in the game, that he's losing the c5 pawn, and there is no any compensation here for white. So he lost the pawn. Apparently, this check is not doing anything because king h7 of course couldn't be played. There is the move queen c2. Bishop f8 would be on the board. He will block the check, and then he'll get a little bit passive, but he will manage to get out from this. Like he can play g6 or king h7, g6, king g7 to bring the king to safety and so on. Maybe rook d8 to trade the rooks. Instead, he played queen to c4 here, and that's a blunder. Another blunder from Alireza, where Magnus spotted in 30 seconds the move bishop f2, where after king takes, knight e3, and now suddenly king is going away from the knight. The problem is this knight on g3 is not protected by a pawn on h2. That's the downside. And that's why this bishop was always very strong in all this Italian game. King e3, trying to do something, but apparently after g6 there is nothing. Queen would like to stay on this diagonal, so there's a checkmate, but unfortunately white is not able to prepare it. He played rook e7, and Magnus gave him a checkmate. So it's 3-for-1, and now Alireza is already in a big problem. So Magnus took the first set. Alireza started with d4, d5, and now g3. So this is some sort of improvised Catalan version where he's not pushing c4, he's strictly developing firstly the king side and going castles, because he want to avoid all the variations with d takes c4 with the normal queen's gambit ideas. So after knight f3, c takes d4, castles, Magnus played the move h6. This move is really smart. He's taking the time, he's waiting for white to do something. He's not still pushing e6. One of the lines is of course here e6, and then after knight takes d4, e5 is one of the main lines. So e6, knight takes d4, e5, and now knight goes back to f3 or b3. We've seen h6, which is a smart decision, and now after b3 he's now going h5, which is another line, because since he decided to develop the bishop on b2, Magnus is trying to opt for opening the h line and king side attack. To be honest, I'd never seen this move until this moment. I didn't see it anyone playing, even myself, which I like to play this line as black. So I know for e6 here, I know for knight c6, but h5 never seen. It's apparently good, and now c3, which is a little bit weird, right? Because why would you give up another pawn? But the problem for black is if this take happens, now suddenly there is a lot of pieces developed while black pieces are completely off the rank. Like on the 8th rank staying, there is nothing to do about development. He has to be careful about certain breaks such as e4, knight e5 ideas. Like this pawn is also not super safe, and so on and so on. So that's why taking this pawn is not good. He decided to play knight c6, and after take, the black position will be good after bishop f5. If the pawn is on e6, then this bishop is not having a nice time. He will be blocked by the pawn. But since now bishop comes out, then this is super comfortable position, especially we've seen these structures in such a Jobava London where we have h5 against Jobava London system. This setup here and trying to fight against kingside fianchetto. Bishop g5, now bishop e7, such a normal moves we've seen on the board. And the problem for white is this bishop on g2. So he's not on this diagonal. Also, he has weaknesses on the queen side. Like this knight is not protected by the pawn on b2. He needs to be careful. So this knight is on the edge, and now the other knight is on the edge. So when you see something like this definitely not looks good. And that's why Magnus is trying to trade some of the active pieces, such a bishop on g5, and then trying to put more pressure on the dark squares, because look at the queen side. Dark squares are vulnerable. So after bringing the pieces back, so the knight is, maybe this is mistake according to the engine, but for me it looks very natural. He wants to just have the knight back, and he wants to reroute the knight on e4. Also, he wants to stack the rooks on the c line and just to get forward. While white is questionable what white is doing here. He cannot jump here. Rerouting the knight back is not an option. Like knight c5 can be always kicked away with b6. While here when we jump on b4, then knight e3 will happen, right? And that's actually something similar happens here. Stacking the rooks, knight comes to c5, the knight b4, the knight comes here, trying to open up some trouble on the rook here. b4 is a logical move, but now b6, so kicking the knight out of the way. Knight e4 here, queen d7, amazing move. Putting the pressure here, while the knight cannot move because rook on c3 is hanging. Rook c7, queen takes c7, b5. The position looks again normal and natural, but knights are off the board. Like, knights are not connected. Look at this knight. He will be jumping soon here. On the other side, this knight will come and replace the knight on f6. Queen b4, knight bd7, f3. So I'm not into the white's position at all, but on the other side, there is no concrete problem for white. And he's trying to do something about that, like trying to maybe push the center. Knight b2, bishop g6, bishop f1. So he's trying to control all these light squares, these weaknesses, while black is struggling how to find a way and put the knights on the queen side. Finally, queen c2 happened, knight e1. White is entering passivity, like look at all these pieces staying back rank and only queen is on the queen side. Again, knight on the edge of the board, super passive. Knight f2 trying to protect the piece. g5, amazing attacking move, trying to push g4. So white starts playing e4, and here Magnus made a mistake. He took with the knight here and completely missed the counterplay on the queen. Rook e2. And now the problem is that queen cannot stay connected with the knight and protect the knight. It means like the only squares are here and here, which is covered by the knight and queen. In that case, since there is a problem about that, white is about to win the piece. And to not mess up with that, he should firstly take here. And if they take back, let's say with bishop, now to think about grabbing this pawn, like with something like g4, knight g5, or going something like rook c4, winning the d4 pawn. That was a better solution. And you obviously, if you watch the live stream, you see that Magnus was not happy once seeing this, but Alireza is having 24 seconds, and Magnus is trying to flag him. So they were entering this forcing line where Magnus sacrificed the queen, but Alireza is so quick. You see, he played 7 moves within 2 seconds. So he was calculating very quick here, because this position is hard to lose when you have 1 minute more on clock. But when you have low time, like Alireza is having here, then it could be tricky, because you can maybe misclick something or you can spend too much time on one move. And that's why Magnus is trying to play complicated moves, but Alireza is suddenly finding all best moves here. And he's trying to do something, but there is a clear taxi driver here to the b8 square, where even the other one cannot do anything. Magnus tried to play here for tricks, but he blundered the rook by the end. And that's how he resigns after the move queen e5. There is no way how to additionally defend the knight, and checkmate is coming soon with queen f4, queen f6, and queen g7. So Alireza took the point in this round. So we have now 1-1. Now the next game Magnus is playing classic on Queen's Gambit, and now we see Slav defense from Alireza, semi Maron Slav. G3, one of my very favorite lines. D takes c4. The point of this Maron Slav is always to take on c4 and then later to protect this with the move b5. Bishop g2, b5, as you see very early. So again, white is playing on compensation, but black is trying to search and keep this structure as long as possible and to enter some solid endgame where he could try to do something more. But of course, the usual break is happening with the move b3. So that's something you should always remember. Like, if you don't know how to break these pawns, look for b3 and a4. Don't do a4 immediately, because you can face some uncomfortable b4 moves, or they can just ignore you. But b3 is a dealer here. It's a very important move. b4, and now looks like, okay, they're gonna plant the c3 there, right? But on the other side, there we are seeing break on the b4, and it's a problem for them how to defend it even more. Now knight c4 comes here. Magnus is controlling all the stuff. Then also he's trying to seek for some e4, e5, and then gaining the square on d6, which is one of the very popular ideas in all these systems. So takes here, and a takes before was apparently the best move. Maybe Alireza was not sure about the knight b6 jump, which opens the line and pins this bishop. That's why Alireza firstly took here, and now after b takes and a takes before, there is the move c5, and now this bishop is completely out of the game. Despite black is having these pawns here, which looks dangerous, they cannot go anywhere. There is no white square bishop, the knights are not connected with these pawns easily. we are going to see some bishop f4 and knight b6 stuff with queen b3, and these pawns will fall down. So Alireza played bishop 7, queen b3. Even though Magnus sacrificed this pawn, he's bringing another piece, and look how much these pieces are fluent and together joining the queenside expansion. Queen g4, trying to stay in the game with a queen on the 4th rank, but now h3, kicking the queen completely out. After winning this pawn, it's already starting being very desperate for black, because this bishop is out, this knight not developed. I mean, this knight jump will not change anything. Like, at least if we are scared about something, we can always take it. But queen b7 is a very important move here. That is a big threat for black, so he has to think about that. Knight c3 was maybe miss, but to be honest, it's a very natural move, trying to get the pawn and then also to open up the position. Knight b7, rook a8 here, and after taking the pawn on c6, position looks very natural, targeting the rook, targeting the knight. Rook b8, apparently here bishop takes c5 was better, because after bishop takes c5, now there is this inclusion of rook b8. And the point is, whenever you move your queen, let's say you go queen a3, now knight takes c5. And equal trade, while the knights are maybe more connected than these two pieces. And also rook is more active than the rook on f1. Alireza didn't see that. In this moment, he's not low on time. Maybe this was the first game that he's like actually having more time than Magnus. But after a couple of trades, we are seeing very equal stuff here. But the problem for Alireza is that at this point, the pieces are very kinda, you know, not many pieces here are protected by pawns. Like, for example, here, bishop protected by pawn, queen protected by pawn. Knight is the only piece that not protected, like, but who is attacking this knight. So when you see not protected pieces in the game, trying to attack them more, like this knight is overloaded. Rook is not being protected. Now bishop c5 will be fallen if the knight moves. So like, it's very hard now to deal. Like, after bishop takes c3, there is queen d7, and if you move this bishop, there is queen d8 checkmate. So you should look always for the weaknesses, and of course the next one is king safety here. In the middle games, you're looking for pieces that are not protected. When the things get open, you're looking for the king safety. Like, white king is very safe, he has the gap. Like, king is not happy about the back rank issue. But Magnus didn't see that, and he offered a queen trade, which of course Alireza welcomely accepted. Takes, and yeah, I think and I believe that he didn't have problems in this endgame too much. He's getting again low on time, and Magnus is shuffling. He's trying, and there is no tricks for now. I think that this game also ended up in a draw. I don't remember this game, or maybe actually Magnus won this game. Oh yeah, he did. He missed completely rook h7, followed by rook 2. And also the bishop is trapped. Like, he should play something like king g8, but maybe he was scared of some knight f6 jumps and so on. That's why he played king f8. Yeah, you see, from the very equal position, but again, Alireza is low on time. So he had a problem again with the time in the endgame. In the endgame, just to give you one tip, it's always easier to play with a knight when you have pawns on one side of the board. If there is, like, let's say one pawn here and one pawn here, immediately this bishop becomes a more flexible piece, because white has to watch out for both sides, while bishop, when you put the bishop somewhere, he's looking already on the both side. But knights cannot jump too much. That's the point. When you're playing on one side, always knight is more comfortable. And here king is very close. This pawn is actually controlling a lot of stuff. Even if it's a double pawn, it's a very nice benefit for Magnus in this position. Okay, then we have the game where Alireza is taking white pieces, and like all the time, as you see, they're pushing d4 more than e4. d4 becomes really popular nowadays, and now we are seeing some Benko stuff where positions are always complicated, and black took the queenside control and took the space. And when this already happened on the board, black is always fine. Like, you already play some chess, there is no theory. Like, black wants to go bishop g7, he's trying to bring the knight to e5 or to go b6 and trying to support c4 breaks. On the other side, knight can also jump after c4 break on c5. This bishop is always coming on this diagonal. On the other side, white is trying to take control and trying to trade the dark square bishop for their dark square bishop, and also to start expanding the pawns in the center. We are seeing some complicated decisions that happened, and barely here white is not achieving anything much because he cannot use this pin better. As you see, there is no tricks. Like if some of this knight is not here, then he will have some targets, but he can just move the rook out of the way, and the next move is knight is free to go back. And simply black is pawn up. Maybe he has the king side problems, but with one move he's defending everything. I think he can do h6, he can do f6. Maybe h6 is not good because there is some h4 breaks, which could make things unstable if the h line gets open. But f6 is more pleasant because now if h4 happens here, now then g4. And there is no entrance with queen on g5 also. So this actually happened in the game. And knight c3, knight e5. So rerouting the knight and light square control from Alireza. At this point, he would like somehow to break with f3. This is the only way how he can do something in this position. Otherwise, there is no support from this bishop, or to reroute this bishop to c4. This looks very natural. Then he's shuffling more with the knight. He went castles, and then he's trying now to do some compensations and sacrifice the exchange. Knight takes g5, knight e3, queen comes in, and now the question is, can actually Alireza do something here and give a checkmate to the black's king? Of course, Magnus is not allowing queen to stay on the G line, and he is now protecting the pawn with pushing, and queen is doing the great job. Queen h6, rook f7, king is super safe, there is no entrance on the 8th rank from the rook, there is no piece that can put a pressure. This knight is perfectly outshining, bishop is perfectly outshining the knight, and at this point black is doing amazing while white is barely searching for any sort of counterplay. And after a few moves, this trade happened, and now this knight is completely outshining this knight, like dominating this knight, and he blundered the fork, and that was game over. So we've seen that Alireza is blundering too much in these finals. He's a little bit on some sort of pressure. Like, of course, everyone is being under pressure when playing Magnus Carlsen, but he should more rely on the intuition than on calculation here. We are seeing how Magnus is playing fast, confident. He's simply not calculating, as he's mentioning all the time. And the last game was the amazing game, where we are seeing the typical Alpine, the perfect choice if you need only a draw in the game. And that's actually what Magnus needs here. It's 2-1 in the second set, and if he managed to make a draw or win, he is winning. He's winning the esports final. While Alireza needs to win the game if he wants tie breaks, or to go into the third set. Bishop e7, and this is some untypical Alpine variation, b6. I didn't see this too much earlier. d4, he's trying immediately to place the bishop on b7, and I guess to transpose into the lines with some e6. But then I got surprised while watching, and Alireza went for g6. And his idea is to try to trade some knights and then to put a full pressure on this pawn by going queen c7 and just simply developing the pieces around that way. Of course, Magnus is understanding this position very well. He is keeping the pawn on e5. It's really important one for white here. If white drops the pawn on e5, black is already much better. So that's why he needs to bring the knight back, not trade pieces. Without trading, he's like many players would trade here, which is definitely not good on the lower levels, because you're allowing the other knight to get out, and then later who is getting the attention of this pawn on e5. So you need to be careful about that. Knight f3, knight a6, and now h4. So Magnus is trying to bring some pressure also on the king side. b4 here looks very natural, also trying to stop knight c5, but there is one problem with this move. There is a fantastic move, queen b8, and later on followed by d6. So pawn is already under pressure and three attackers on this pawn, so he needs additional defender. After queen e2, the other knight will join around, like knight c7, knight e6, and d6. This diagonal getting scary, and suddenly white can be in a lot of trouble because his position is not so much safe. On the other side, Magnus played h4, trying to not push his pawns. h5 by Alireza. He's weakening the king side more than he's defending from anything. So I think he should ignore it and just play knight c5 or just go in castles. That's something, it's hard to say, but a lot of players are getting scared and pushing h5, but that's actually more weakening than defending yourself, especially when this pawn is on e5. Anyway, h5 is not the worst move in the position. And now after putting the knight on e6, Black is feeling very nice, as you see, like pressure on the f4 square, still pressure here, queen will be placed here, or in b8, maybe some later a5 could happen and this diagonal could get open for Alireza. So bishop to g3 and now d6. Very nice move, targeting the central pawn. Bishop to e4, castles. And after this move, it's allowing Magnus to simplify a little bit. So instead of that, he should take on e5. This is a better way of taking, because now when you take on b7, then knight f3 could be included, and after bishop takes f3, for example, the knight on c3 is hanging. That's the point. But when you take with a pawn, then this bishop could not be open later. That's the biggest problem for Black in this exchange variation. When the knight takes, knight can be able to jump somewhere later. So we've seen this, and now after knight takes c5, it's simply looking that white is not having any single problem. Only problem is this diagonal, but after moving this rook out of the way, this rook is protecting knight, which is totally logical. Maybe he had some better move to jump with a knight here, but rook c1 to me looks also very logical. Knight e4, now knight e5. So he's just allowing this trade, and now moving the queen out of the way. In this position already, I've seen that Magnus is doing very nice. And there is barely any sort of counterplay for Black here, because position now looks very normal. There is no any sort of potential complications. e6 played, and after rook for e to d1, he completely forget that queen cannot go to e7 because of rook to d7 fork. e6 is a very natural move, trying to put the queen into the game. Since queen cannot go on c7, there is just knight takes g6, the similar tactics. e6 very natural, but after this move, game is pretty much over. On queen e8, there is just simple move knight e7. On queen f6, like it was in the game, there is just knight e7, and Black is barely trying something here. Magnus made the same routine as he's doing always in the winning position, finishing the game by trading queens, and now looking for more simplification, where after rook c8, bishop e4, and c6, Alireza resign and lose the game. That's how the Esports World Chess Cup finished. Yeah, Magnus won, and the game is over. The tournament is finished. So before we go, I wanna show you something. I recently crossed 1,000 subscribers, and now I'm open to show you the memberships on my channel. So if you want to support my work and be a part of this community, you can join my my channel membership, and you can get some perks and also some additional content, such as only members videos, or on live streams you're gonna be the marked one as the first member, and everyone gonna see you inside the chat. So you can see on the screen a couple of them. There is some emojis of myself, something interesting, 3 perks, basic, standard, and pro. And yeah, that's something I want to show you here. And pretty much that's it for today. If you would like to see something more about openings or some other stuff, you can check this video here.